Hi, I'm Jan Risher. I'm the editor of Louisiana Inspired, and we welcome you to the very first ever Louisiana Inspired Book Club. Before we go any further, I want to introduce Casey Big Pond with the Gina Band of Choctaws here in Louisiana. And Casey is going to have an opening for us. Thank you, Casey, for joining us.
Alito, thank you for joining us. My part is land acknowledgement, I guess. So every day should be land acknowledgement. Um, that's what I do when I go to work, when I go home, when I look at the land, I survey the land, I harvest from the land. So everything I do is with the land. So as humans, that's what we shall be doing is always survey the land and monitor the land. Um, so yakoki lichmache hashpa pampasaro yakoki lichmache ergo anopa mapella magachilas can ergash magella ale you get back to you, Dan.
Thank you so much, Casey. Next on Casey will be a part of our panel. We'll be hearing more from him momentarily, but first I want to introduce the other panelists. And all of these folks have read the book, and we also invite you as the others of you who are joining the broadcast to put your questions or comments about the book in the comment section, and we will have a little bit of time at the end of our planned programming to address some of those. Next, we have Kylie Altier, and Kylie is the 2024 Louisiana State Teacher of the Year. She's a first grade teacher at McKinley Elementary here in Baton Rouge, and she earned her Bachelor of Science in Early Childhood Education and a Master's of Elementary Education from Stephen Austin. She's won more than $33,000 in grants and was just telling us a little bit about a garden. Kylie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And did you want to just tell them a little bit about the garden that you were mentioning earlier?
Oh, yeah, we have a beautiful school garden here at McKinley Elementary School, and reading this book has given me so many new perspectives. I'm excited to bring back into our garden here. So we have it's in partnership with University United Methodist, and we have over 100 kids that garden in there every week.
Great. Thanks so much, Kylie. Next, we have Jennifer Blanchard. She's an instructor of horticulture, medicinal plants at the LSU School of Plant, Environmental, and Soil Sciences. She's a doctoral student in botany. So I know, Jennifer, that this book must have really resonated with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said about the book and how it speaks about the connection with places and plants. And, I could go on, but I'll stop.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Madeline Ellis founded Mimosa Handcrafted in 2008. She uses the ancient art of lost wax casting alongside her team at Mimosa to create unique bronze, sterling silver, and 14 karat gold pieces, including precious and semi-precious stones. But originally, she went to school to study landscape architecture, and she really uses that background and her love of nature and the human experience for her passion for design. So thank you, Madeline, for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
And I know just from having had many conversations with you that this book resonated in a big way with you.
Yes, it felt like hearing things that I already knew somewhere deep inside of me, but she articulated them. And then of course, lots of things that I didn't know, but there's just so like Jennifer said, there's just so much to go over in this book. And even rereading it for this, I felt like I could just spend another 10 years unpacking this book. So it'll be exciting to talk through it with y'all today.
Well, thanks for joining us. And next we have Emma Fick. Emma is an artist based in New Orleans. She creates watercolors and ink on paper and lots of incredibly cool earrings as well. But she merges Louisiana-specific symbols and ancient Byzantine frescoes, creating half-human, half-bird mythological creatures and combining plant species in ways not found in nature. She's also the author and has published 3 illustrated books, Snippets of Serbia, Snippets of New Orleans, and Border Crossings, A Journey on the Trans-Siberian Railway. There's a lot to unpack there, Emma, and you are muted.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. And reading this book, I was really drawn to the passages that talk about the place that beauty has in respecting our landscape and communicating with our landscape, and how nature's beauty is part of its survival. And I hope we get to talk more about that, because all of those passages are very highlighted in my book.
We will. All right. And last but not least, we have Pamela Jenkins. She is the research professor of sociology at University of New Orleans, Emerita. She's a faculty member of UNO's Center for Hazard Assessment, Response, and Technology. Her latest book with Steve Kroll Smith and Vern Baxter, Left to Chance, documents the recovery of 2 African-American neighborhoods after Katrina. Since retirement, she has been a part of research projects analyzing the impacts of sea level rise and the Louisiana coast. And she's also the mother of a very good friend of mine. Thank you for joining us, Pam. And you're muted.
It's my pleasure. What I love about book clubs is you get this range of folks talking about something that you love. And Emma, I own your book, your book about New Orleans. I love this book. Somebody gave it to me in last year, and every time you read it, you learn something new, which is a great compliment to this author.
I want it, before we go any further, I wish that we were a scratch and sniff technology here, because this is some real braided sweetgrass that I ordered and was able to have. And I wish that you could all smell it, because just like Robin Wall Kimmerer describes in the book, it really is just this super sweet, clean, beautiful aroma, very intoxicating. So I wish that you could smell it with me. All right. We will now go to Madeline Ellis for the first question. And it is, Madeline, what has changed for you after reading Braiding Sweetgrass?
I think mostly the part of understanding, or the idea that I'd have this reciprocal relationship with nature, not that only I love it, but that it could love me back. And I see evidence of that everywhere, and the gifts that it gives constantly to us. Like there's somewhere where she says, it's like a good mother that packs lunch for us every day. And then just even as like Emma was talking about with beauty, I feel like I'm just, I go out, I'm outside all the time, and taking in the beauty is, I feel like I'm constantly taking from nature, but to think that I have something to offer to it, that it's, I don't know if that's like a vanity kind of thing, that like, oh, it loves me back, but it does make it feel more like a relationship, and that I'm not just going out taking and loving it, but that like it's appreciating what I might have to offer to it. And I do feel like I try to do that with my work, as far as like finding the little things that people might not notice or know the story of, or, whether it's a plant or a part of the landscape or something that I can tell the story of, that might help people pause and look a little longer and fall in love with it themselves. And then that might be my reciprocation to all of the beauty and gifts that it gives to me.
Wow. Thank you so much. I get that. And whenever I was reading it, and I thought how appropriate here, I happened to be in Baton Rouge, and when she was talking about the flowers, that her initial question was, why do these flowers, the purple and the yellow flowers, look so beautiful together? I thought that was so incredible. I loved that. So thank you, Madeline. All right, Pamela, could you talk with us about the values and norms that define the culture that Robin Wall Kimmerer describes? And you're muted.
I will talk about how it occurred to me, and then I'm sure Casey can, who already talked about it a little bit with thinking what the land did. I was astonished by how well she wrote about the values and norms of this culture, and the notion of reciprocity, the notion of gratitude, the notion of the community of the commons, all of those things, that this kind of intricate building of relationships with the land and with the people. And what occurred to me last night when I was looking over my notes is this: when you think about this, you could think about what happened to the Native Americans here as a great loss over centuries. And even with that great loss, these values of reciprocity and gift giving and this taking not only what you need, not being greedy, all of these things made it past all this other stuff that happened. And they're still alive today. So that's remarkable.
Casey, would you like to follow up to that and just talk about your take on the book and her passion for plants and what you share with her in that line?
Yeah, I do it as well. Whenever I harvest wood or plants, I always offer either myself or tobacco. Whatever I have to offer is how I um, give my offerings. Sometimes I'll even sing to it as an offering, as a gift. So a lot of Native culture is that way. A lot of Native culture, your wealth was determined by how freely you give gifts more than accumulating wealth. Um, so that's how a lot of Native cultures are. Even today, some of the best well respected individuals are ones that give a lot. So it's tied into, they're all connected.
In the book, she talked a little bit. Actually, I hesitated earlier whenever I was showing this piece of sweetgrass. She talked about harvesting the sweetgrass and what's involved in it, and how the people who do that don't sell it. And I did buy the sweetgrass. I didn't have access to it, but they don't sell it for deep philosophical reasons. But what are your thoughts on that, Casey?
Uh, I've been on both ends. I've bought sweetgrass and I've had sweetgrass given to me.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, every time I get sweetgrass, I always have it. And at any given time or moment, if I feel like someone needs it, I give it to them. I pass it on to them. I don't use it myself. I could, but I feel like I'm holding it for somebody to give to somebody that needs it in the time that they need it. So that's how I view sweetgrass. Sweetgrass itself is not really culturally related to the Choctaws in general, because sweetgrass comes from the plains up north, northern Midwest, those regions. So in the South, we don't really have sweetgrass. So
Is there a cultural equivalent in the South? What would be the Choctaw?
well, they say we had our own version of tobacco back in those days. We had our own tobacco. I have some seeds somewhere, but I haven't planted them yet. But they say we had our own tobacco in those days, and for us, that's what belonged to us. And for sweetgrass, that belongs more of the Midwest tribes up in the like
Right,
Sioux and Ojibways. It belongs to them. That's their
right.
territory. That's where sweetgrass mostly comes from.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, Miss Kylie, first grade teacher. Tell us about your work in your school's garden and how that connects to the book Braiding Sweetgrass.
I can feel my heart racing like while I'm hearing you guys all talk about this book. So if I start crying, just bear with me. I feel like this was a very emotional read for me. So I'm just going to give a little bit of context into my story because I think it really pairs so beautifully with this book. I started school gardening with absolutely no knowledge. I have pretty much no, in my family, I'd never really had a deep connection with nature. I'd never planted anything before, but I just felt this like instinctual need to get kids outside. And I actually didn't even start it to garden. I just started to get them outside. And when you say you're gardening, people will say like, "Oh, she's teaching them science." So that's literally why I started gardening. Um, and it just became this beautiful thing where I started feeling the kids and seeing their little hands in the dirt and seeing their joy when they pick a cucumber out of the ground. And then I moved. And I had two young kids, and I was like, you know what, it was a lot to start a garden, and I felt like it was something I couldn't start here in Louisiana because I wouldn't have the time to kind of like do all those things. And then volunteers in public schools reached out to me and was like, hey, we'd love to do a garden at your school. All we need is a sponsor. And I remember just feeling so humbled because it was like all this work and love I'd poured into starting my first garden. Someone here just wanted to like give it to my students. And so like she has this one quote that's like, a gift comes to you through no action of your own, free, having moved towards you without your beckoning. It's not a reward. You can't earn it or call it to you or even deserve it. And yet it appears. And it just felt like I've had a hard time like conceptualizing like how this happened to me. And then so they started the garden here, and it was so much more flourishing because I had the community support. And then we moved schools again. We merged schools with another campus. And in that move, University Terrace merged with Buchanan, and University Terrace had this 40-year relationship with University United Methodist, who signed on and said, actually, we've been running a garden and we'd love for you to just join ours. And if you could come out here and see how beautiful this space is, and again, it just feels like such a beautiful gift that I've often, as I'm going through this Teacher of the Year journey, I felt like undeserving of the gift. And I think hearing her words that it's like, you don't have to be deserving, you just have to be open and receive it. And just kind of being open and being a vehicle for students to connect with nature and to carry on that gift. And just one other thing that just really like hit so hard for me is she said, the land is the real teacher. All we need as students is mindfulness. And I think back to how much pressure I felt at the beginning, like, oh, I don't know anything about garden. I can't do this. But you don't actually need to know anything. You just have to listen to the land. And I've learned so much through this process and just kind of being present and letting the garden speak to me. So, yeah, I had a very big reaction. And I feel like in this work in school gardening, it's so important that feeling the recipient of those gifts, that I'm paying those gifts forward by getting as many kids as I can and speaking to as many teachers as I can about the magic that happens when kids have that connection with nature.
I loved in the book, Kylie, when she wrote extensively about taking her students, her graduate students, to these experiences in nature where they would go in the marsh shopping at Walmart, shopping for what they needed in the marsh. And I just that when they realized the bounty of the earth and how they could do it, that magic that happened. And then when she got the gift from them of them singing Amazing Grace, I thought that was such an incredible example of the magic that happens in the teaching process.
Yeah, I absolutely felt that moment too. And I see it every single time. Like, you will never feel more magic than seeing a kid pull a fruit or a vegetable out of the ground and their joy. It's a really just, yeah, magic is the only word I can use to describe it.
Wonderful. All right, Emma. You mentioned earlier the book's comparison of the Judeo-Christian and indigenous origin stories and what they say about how we see our place in the world. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about storytelling. I'm a visual artist, but I studied literature. And my first love was books and the stories we tell, comparative literature. And I was so struck in the first chapter when Robin was describing the difference in our origin stories, our being Judeo-Christian and hers being Sky Woman indigenous, and how Sky Woman created a garden that was nourishment. And in the biblical Judeo-Christian story, the garden, instead of nourishing, was the downfall of humanity, and how much we don't even realize that these stories that we're told from a very young age steep into how we view the world. So a separation from or a fear of the natural world versus this kinship and this kind of abundance mentality. So instead of being born into the Garden of Eden in Judeo-Christian tradition, we were born already outside of it. And I just have been thinking a lot about the damage that I think that does to how we see our place in the world and how we see ourselves, not of nature, but somehow different from it. And I was thinking about that too when it was talking about beauty and the value of beauty of plants in our world. There was a line where she said that human eyes detect color basically the same way bees do. So we are the same as all the other creatures in the way that we see, in the nature beckons us, but the stories we tell don't always reflect that. And in a lot of my work, I'm kind of trying to build new mythologies around the Louisiana landscape to encourage light in the landscape instead of doom, because I think that, especially now, there's a lot of fear-based thinking, which I get because a lot of scary things happening. But this book really reminded me that if we cling to the idea of delight instead of doom, in the stories we tell and in imagining a future that's better, following that delight is better than, you know, getting weighted down in the doom.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Jen, I wondered about you as your work as Jen Blanchard at work as a botanist. I also know that you have an emotional connection to plants, and you mentioned about the American beautyberry and your emotional connect. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well,
The emotional
you
connection
know,
between plants and people.
yeah, I mean, it's a connection with this, with nature. And that's, the Native American way is this connection with nature. And I think it's something that's born in all of us. It's just sometimes we get far removed away from it in a modern world, right? But for me, it's always been a part of my life. I mean, even, my father is from the North Shore, and we lived in the Honey Island Swamp. He still lives there. And we spent a lot of time on the river, and my grandparents had a farm in Hickory. And I think you're talking about, I told you that, the smell, like plants, when you identify plants, you use a lot of different characteristics, and one of them is the smell or fragrance, just like with the sweetgrass, right? And for me, the smell of the berries, the purple berries on American, well, we call it French mulberry. My mama would call it French mulberry, but on Calicarpa americana, the smell of those berries, like I can close my eyes and I can see her place, the farm that they had, and remember being there in that space with my cousins, my sisters, and everyone. So it's, for me, it's plants have always been a part of my life, and nature has always been a part of my life. Um, Maybe that's like part of who I am, I guess, like how I've evolved. And learning about these plants, I'm a constant learner. Even the sweetgrass, it not being native to Louisiana, but native to North America, like learning about the different species and what their range is. And, that's where I go, and what the uses were. I mean, the name, I've reached out and connected with some Native American members of the Choctaw of Bayou Lacombe, and also in Mississippi, and ask them to help me to learn about the language, because the language, describes the plant, and that also tells me characteristics about the plant often. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just, the plant looked like an animal, so they gave it the name of an animal, like alligator grass or something like that. But often it will tell me a characteristic of the plant. And so learning that, even the Greek and Latin names, sweetgrass is holy grass. So its name derives from two words that mean holy and grass. And so I think that's just where I come from, is wanting to constantly learn, and, knowing that I could go anywhere in the world and connect with plants and learn about them has been, important to me. And this book, I think her being a scientist and also, connected to nature, like I connect with the author a lot in a lot of respects, because I feel the same things that she feels when she's speaking in this book. And so it has been like, some of the other panelists have said, a very emotional time to reread this book, and I connected with other people that way also, speaking about the book and having similar feelings. So
For you and also for Casey, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about Native American uses of plants in Louisiana. And also, Casey, I know you're originally from Mississippi, but could you talk a little bit about that, Jennifer?
yeah, Casey can talk about his experiences. For me, um, being from Louisiana and as a botanist, a lot of these plants, they are throughout the southeast of the United States, and were used similarly by multiple tribes. Uh, the Seminoles and the Choctaw, and so it the plants, even though like Casey's in Mississippi, a lot of the plants that are found here in Louisiana, their range extends there. Now, there are some plants that won't cross the Mississippi River, or didn't historically cross the Mississippi River. It was a much bigger river at the time also, because it wasn't confined by man. But the plants, I talk about that in my class, and I use historic literature to base those lectures upon. But I have, it's people will ask you, they'll say, okay, what plant should I use for whatever? And I'm always like, well, what's the ailment, or what's, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a botanist, but, you know, each plant has a different use. And here in Louisiana, I think it was Greyhawk Perkins told me that for ceremonial smoke, they use the Eastern red cedar. So, because sage doesn't grow here, white sage is not a native plant to Louisiana, sweetgrass is not a native plant to Louisiana. So they would have used the cedar as a ceremonial smoke. But there's lots of plants that have been used as ceremonial smoke, and it would also be dictated by what the ceremony is for, So I think Casey could speak to that more.
Casey, do you have any thoughts there?
Yes, there are people that use cedar in this area. There's a lot of cedar in this area. Um, as far as one plant that most tribes in the southeast use would be the river cane. River cane is widely used all over the southeast for baskets, blowguns, hammocks, whatever use they could use for river cane is what they used. It's a durable plant. It's considered a grass, actually. River cane is considered a grass scientifically. Um, uh, with woodwork, they use cypress for canoes, hickory for ball sticks, and then as far as plants, different plants are for different medicine. Um, so, I mean,
Um,
I guess I know a lot of stuff, but I just can't.
yeah, it's good. I, early before we got started, I had brought this. This is a Choctaw basket from near where Casey. Well, actually, it's from Philadelphia, Mississippi, that area. So, Casey, like, was this river cane?
Yes, that's river cane.
And then how has it died?
Roots. They use natural roots to use as dyes to dye the river cane.
One person who's watching has asked, why is tobacco so often given as a gift back to the land, Casey? Do you know?
Not specifically.
Yeah.
I would say because it does have those cleansing properties, and it's very valuable among the community. So, it's not like when people think about tobacco, they often have a negative connotation to the plant, but it actually is and was used as a medicine. The raw native, tobacco. So it it has healing properties, and it also, the smoke has been used for smoke bathing and cleansing. Um, and so it has some antibacterial. Smoke of different plants have different levels of antibacterial activity. So I think that it's such a valuable plant in the community and held in high regard. So that's why it's a gift back to the earth.
That makes sense. So, in speaking of healing the earth, this question is for Kylie. Kylie, what role do you see children playing in healing the earth?
I see it like in a really I don't want to like over sell, but I really think that like it's not that us as adults, we obviously still have a huge role to play, but like this is their world. Sorry, I'm gonna cry again. Anyway, it's like this is theirs, and this is their future, and they get to shape it. And I think like this one, I'm gonna quote again. She said, "Isn't the purpose of education to learn the nature of your own gifts and how to use them for good in the world?" And I think we miss that a lot in education, that good in the world, and how much more fulfilling our life is when we're doing good in the world. And I feel that every day in my classroom. It's like, this isn't a job for me. It's something that I get fulfillment out of every day, and it's light and it's love. And so to be able to give kids that same feeling in their adult lives that I'm experiencing in the classroom, but in a way that's so much more poignant, directed toward nature, like they have the capacity to do some really important work in our future in giving back to the land. And I just thought like there was this one chapter where she's talking about the language, and she references that, like when kids are little itty bitty, which I have toddlers right now, they'll often come up to plants and call them he or she, and animals, and that in her language those pronouns are the same. Anything that's living has the same pronouns. But then she was explaining that, we as adults correct them and say, actually, that's an it. And we're just like separating children from that natural connection. And I feel like as a mother, I've absolutely probably made that same comment to my children. And it's something I'm, after reading this book, like really actively and intentionally trying to just restore that, what I do think is a very innate connection between children and nature. And I want to see, you know, in the future, how they can use those gifts to maybe, you know, make some big changes on our earth.
Thank you so much. I can only say that I wish my children had you for their first grade teacher. Emma, I was wanting to give you the chance to talk about, you had mentioned about the spoonful of sugar mentality, and the holistic appreciation of plants doesn't have to be academic purely, or steeped in panic. Could you talk a little bit about that and reciprocity?
Yeah, and I think a few others have touched on this, like the idea, like Kylie was just talking about it, the idea of the innate delight in plants. And I kind of touched on it as well, leading with delight and beauty. I mean, we can do that as humans, and in that way, we're actually, as Robin says, we are emulating plants that also lead with beauty and delight and have grown and evolved to put together, you know, colorways that are pleasing to our eyes, to bees' eyes, to butterflies' eyes. And so I think that when we're trying to encourage connection to nature, a lot of it can be done instead of like finger wagging and saying, well, if you're not recycling everything, then shame on you. I think that the shame can be very detrimental and actually make people freeze up. Whereas if we lead with beauty, which Madeline also mentioned, and we lead with little details that people can then start noticing in their daily life, I think that the holistic outcome of that is attention, care, respect, and reciprocity, and all of these things that she talks about. So I do this, it's not specifically with plants, but in my illustrated books too, a lot of it is dense historical information, but being presented in a lighthearted way, and in a way that, yeah, is like a spoonful of sugar. And maybe there is a little bit of medicine. I think the medicine that we need to take is restoring our kind of older way of convening with the earth. So that's the medicine. There is work to be done, but I think the spoonful of sugar is how we get there, through art, through gardening, through all of these things.
Thank you so much. All right, Pam, could you talk a little bit about the relationship between traditional and scientific knowledge? I just loved the way that she got us there by her initial conversation with a professor, you know, but could you talk a little bit about that?
I thought this was really an important part of this book, in that she began her life as in a way that was kind of trying to access traditional knowledge, thinking that when she went to college, it would be different. And this whole experience that she had where her knowledge and the knowledge of her peoples was sort of dismissed. And now over her work, she has been able, in this book and in the other research that she does, combine her personal narrative. Like, we got to know her, you know, and as a scholar, I was like, oh my God, look what she's doing. So much energy, taking students, making all those things that she was doing. This idea that the traditional knowledge that exists, the traditional ecological knowledge that exists, which is so important, and scientific knowledge can be weaved together to make the thing you're studying better. And what you saw, like in the chapter on maple syrup, the chapter on the salamanders, all of those chapters, what you saw is her taking her scientific and traditional knowledge into action. You know, she just really understood this relationship in a way that few scholars do. And I want to read one quick quote and then I'll stop. It's towards the end of the book, but it really matches what everyone else has talked about. And it's really a call to action. Gratitude for all the earth has given us leads us to courage to turn and face the Wendigo, the monster that she writes about, that stalks us, to refuse to participate in an economy that destroys the beloved earth, to line the pockets of the greedy, to demand an economy that is aligned with life, which is like a moment all the way through this. This is a thread that is aligned with life, not stacked against it. It is easy to write this, harder to do, which is kind of what Emma was talking about, the spoonful of sugar. So this idea that there are ways of knowing that you can work with and enrich both.
Wonderful. Thank you. Madeline, you mentioned earlier about that whole thing of, not only can we take, but we can also give. What are ways that we can give from your perspective back to the earth?
Well, I think it says that that one quote. Oh, I just had it here somewhere. Somebody just read it. I think Kylie said it. The one of the most important things we can know is our gift and how to use it to give back to the world. And I think what a gift it is to us when we can recognize what that is, because it's so fulfilling for us and the earth. So it's such a reciprocal relationship that ends up being so fulfilling. I don't know if I'm answering your question exactly, but I think it only can be good for us when we find that thing that we can give back, that we can uniquely give. And there's something else I was thinking of while we were all talking, about, because we've all kind of, I think, said over and over how book has moved us to tears, and how it's just been so profound to read. And I think while we're not indigenous maybe to America in the same way that she is, we are indigenous to the earth in a very ancient, in our bones, we're of the earth kind of way. And I think she speaks to that in all of humanity, wherever we're from. So when we're reading it from like the most ancient part of our being, and it's a knowing that we all have, and a remembrance or a reminding of this relationship that we crave really deep inside of our most ancient parts, if that makes sense. So I feel like it's such a beautiful invitation back to that, if that makes sense.
That makes lots of sense. And I want to get back to you in a moment and talk about awe for a minute. But Casey, do you have any further thoughts about, and we actually have a reader who has asked, what are some actions that citizens can take pragmatically in the spirit of this book? And do you have any thoughts there, Casey?
As citizens, be mindful of who you vote for.
All right.
In regards to politics.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what she said about politics. Be mindful of who you vote for. Pay attention to who their donors are. A lot of politicians they get donations from oil, and oil goes against preservation of land. So just be careful of who you vote for. Find out their character. If it comes down to it, if it comes down to a vote, would they vote for land or would they vote for their profits? So that's one action that any normal citizen can make in this day and age to help preserve the land, the natives, the food, water. Just pay attention. Don't just vote because of their religion. Don't just vote because of who or what education they got. Just kind of do some research and find out what they're really about.
And in terms of as an individual, aside from that, what else do you see that we could do better?
Um,
I mean, there's a lot of things, but what else?
well, one thing is footprint. Um, when you buy a wooden house, the wooden house is going to deteriorate, and go back to the earth. It's going to start over. But when you buy metal, plastic, those take longer to disintegrate. Even the metal itself, it takes it won't it'll rust, but it'll take a long time to rust. So footprint. Um, if I had it any other way, I would build me a hut and live there, knowing that at some point it's gonna go back to the earth.
Casey, in terms of just your general thoughts about, Robin Wall Kimmerer's message in Braiding Sweetgrass, I mean, had you read the book prior to this, or
No, I didn't.
so what was your big takeaway from the book and from this conversation today?
One thing is we can learn a lot from plants. Um, if you're around nature long enough, you start seeing patterns of how they are connected, how um, they are they're a part of your life as well. Um, Same thing with river cane. We use river cane for baskets, and we use baskets as to carry things, to store things. So we're all connected in our own way to the grass, to the plants, to the animals. We're all connected. I've been told that one time that animals and plants can survive without humans, but humans can't survive without plants and animals.
Mm-hmm.
So we are insignificant to this ecosystem. That's how they don't need us, but we need them. But for some reason, people have this mindset that we're above all of that, and we're
Right.
not.
Right. And I think that we're looking to see if there are any other comments or questions that we have currently from readers. But before we go further, I wanted to just announce what our next book is going to be. And, the Louisiana Inspired Book Club, we will do a blend of nonfiction, such as Braiding Sweetgrass, and fiction. And our book for the second quarter is Amor Toll's Rules of Civility. And it is a fictional book. It is based loosely on a character, well, it's based on a character who tries very hard to live by the rules of civility that George Washington recorded. And I am really, really excited to say that Amor Tolls will be joining us himself for the conversation. So that's super exciting for someone who really appreciates his writing. He also wrote A Gentleman in Moscow, which will start as a miniseries on various streaming services on Friday, March the 29th. And then he's got a new book coming out that's a sequel to Rules of Civility on April the 2nd. So that is a big announcement. And I just wanted to finish up by going back, Madeline, to you and to speak a little bit about awe. And I know that that's a big part of who you are and how you live your life.
It's funny. I had been having a conversation with a friend I don't know, last year, and we were talking about things, and I kept saying, like, I crave that feeling of when you're like, wow, this is amazing, something beautiful or something inspiring. And I just, like, the next week happened to find this book called Awe, by Dr. Keltner. And in the book, he talks about, from a scientist, it's sort of how Braiding, if you've read Braiding Sweetgrass and enjoyed it, you probably really enjoy the book Awe, because it's kind of marrying that kind of those two worlds of science and spirituality, but in understanding why we need awe from a health standpoint, just the same way we need nutrition and sunlight and water and all of these things, we need awe. And so this book just laid out, like, exactly, was sort of like proof of all the reasons I knew intuitively I needed awe, and I thrive when I experience awe in nature, especially. But it explained to me why, like, in my brain and in my body and my cells, I need it, and how we're built for it. And even, like, how Emma kept pointing out about how we perceive the beauty, how like how bees do, like, we see the color combination of the asters and I forget the other plant, but the two plants next to each other, how we see them. We are made to appreciate those colors next to each other, and those plants know that about us, so they grow next to each other, so that we'll be drawn to it. So the bees are drawn to it, so they'll pollinate, so they'll take part of it. And one thing that experiment that they did, when they grew the sweetgrass, and they had the plot that was harvested and the plot that wasn't harvested, and the plot that was harvested actually did better and had less. It was, like, more stimulated to grow. I know that's not about awe, but I thought that was so powerful to remind us of this reciprocal relationship, that we do have a part in it, that we can have a really beautiful, powerful part in this, like, reciprocal experience of human and nature. And awe, I think, is the piece that draws us into it. So it allows us to fall in love with it. And back to, like, how are we going to do better for the planet? We can't until we actually love it. And you can tell somebody all day long, you need to recycle, or you need to do these things, but they won't get it until they fall in love with an aster, or they fall in love with an American beautyberry and the way it smells, and the way, something that you picked in the forest tastes. And then you have this personal relationship with it, and you want to give back to it. And then it comes naturally. It's not a thing you have to do. It's a thing that you, like, wake up and need to do because you want to give back. And so
it's a part of you.
Yeah.
At that point. Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Madeline, Emma, Pam, Casey, Jennifer, and Kylie, for taking time, not just from today, but the time that you took to read the book or reread the book and prepare for this. We're grateful for each of you, and for you joining us here, and for all you other readers out there who we heard from, not just today, but by email. I'd also really like to thank Lauren Sheremy. She's helping manage this today, and John Balance, who has done all of the technical work here. Hearing from so many readers about this book was a testament to its richness and message. We would be amiss if we don't thank Robin Wall Kimmerer, and wish that she certainly could have joined us. But thank you all, and I hope that you'll join us again. We'll have a live chat. Haven't said it yet, but it'll probably be early June with Amor Tolles about Rules of Civility. And it's a very different read, but I certainly invite you all to join us for that one as well. And thank you for reading Braiding Sweetgrass with us. Bye-bye.